"Look at Grandpa shaking," they mocked, thinking he was terrified of flying. Minutes later, when guns were drawn, his true identity surfaced. Welcome to Untold Lives. Before we begin this story of hidden protection and unsung guardians of the skies, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe these stories of quiet heroes deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. Flight 238 from Chicago to Denver was routine in every way except one. In seat 14C by the window sat a man who made the other passengers uncomfortable without saying a word. His name was David Martinez, and at 63, he looked like someone who had never quite gotten used to flying. His hands gripped the armrests during taxi. He checked his seatbelt 3 times before takeoff. When the plane hit mild turbulence over Kansas, he visibly tensed, his knuckles white against the blue fabric of his seat. The businessman in 14B noticed first. "First time flying, buddy?" he asked with the kind of condescending smile reserved for people you assume know less than you do. Martinez glanced at him briefly. "Something like that," he said quietly. The flight attendant, Jessica, a veteran with 12 years of experience, had pegged Martinez as a nervous flyer the moment he boarded. He had asked specific questions about the aircraft type, the flight path, and emergency procedures. Questions that nervous passengers always asked, thinking information would calm their fears. "He's terrified," Jessica whispered to her colleague Mark as they prepared the beverage service. Poor guy's probably never been on a plane before. But if they had looked more carefully, they might have noticed things that didn't fit their assumptions. Martinez wasn't reading a magazine or watching the in-flight entertainment. His eyes moved constantly, scanning faces, noting behaviors, cataloging details. He paid attention to who went to the bathroom and how long they stayed. He watched how passengers interacted with crew members. He observed who was sleeping and who was pretending to sleep. Most tellingly, Martinez's nervousness wasn't about flying. It was about something else entirely. 20 minutes into the flight, a young mother in row 16 was having trouble with her toddler. The child was crying, and she was clearly stressed. Martinez noticed immediately, not because of the noise, but because her anxiety was attracting attention from 2 men in business class who kept looking back at her with expressions that weren't sympathetic. Martinez had been watching those men since boarding. They had purchased their tickets separately but boarded together. They carried no reading material and showed no interest in the flight entertainment. Most importantly, they were both wearing identical watches, expensive, but not the kind of identical that happened by coincidence. When the toddler's crying intensified, one of the men unbuckled his seatbelt and walked toward the back of the plane. Martinez watched him pass, noting the slight bulge under his jacket on the right side. Martinez's hands stopped shaking. He pressed the flight attendant call button, and when Jessica approached, he spoke quietly. "The gentleman who just walked to the back. When he returns, watch his right side carefully." Jessica looked confused. "I'm sorry?" "Just watch," Martinez said. "And when you see what I think you're going to see, don't react visibly." Jessica stared at him. "Sir, I don't understand what you're asking me to do." Martinez looked directly at her, and for the first time since boarding, his expression was completely calm. "I need you to trust me for the next few minutes," he said. "Can you do that?" Something in his tone made Jessica nod. The man returned from the back of the plane, but instead of sitting down, he stopped in the aisle and made eye contact with his companion. Jessica, watching as Martinez had instructed, saw the bulge under his jacket shift as he moved. Her breath caught. Martinez was already reaching into his carry-on bag. "Ladies and gentlemen," the first man said loudly, his voice cutting through the cabin noise, "I need everyone to remain calm and stay in your seats." The reaction was immediate. Some passengers gasped, others looked around in confusion. A few reached for their phones. That's when the second man stood up, and the outline of a weapon became visible under his clothing. "This aircraft is now under our control," he announced. "If everyone cooperates, no one will be harmed." The cabin erupted in frightened whispers and muffled sobs. The crying toddler's mother pulled her child closer. The businessman in 14B looked at Martinez with sudden understanding. Martinez sat perfectly still, his hand inside his bag, his eyes locked on the hijackers. "You in 14C," the first hijacker called out, having noticed Martinez's stillness in the sea of panicked movement. "Look at Grandpa shaking." "Are you scared, old man?" Several passengers actually looked at Martinez and saw what appeared to be an elderly man frozen in terror. His face was pale, his breathing shallow. He looked exactly like someone who was completely overwhelmed by the situation. What they couldn't see was that Martinez was counting. Hijacker 1 was approximately 12 feet away, moving forward. Hijacker 2 was 20 feet back, still positioned near the galley. Martinez was calculating angles, response times, and civilian positions in case he needed to act. "I said, are you scared?" the hijacker repeated, walking closer to Martinez's row. Martinez looked up at him with eyes that seemed confused and frightened. "Please," he said, his voice shaking. "I just want to go home." The hijacker laughed. "Everyone wants to go home, Grandpa." "But first we're taking a little detour." That's when Martinez noticed something that changed everything. The hijacker's weapon wasn't properly secured. It was tucked into his waistband, accessible but not in a tactical holster. These weren't trained professionals. They were amateurs who had gotten lucky with airport security but didn't understand how to maintain control of a hostile environment. Martinez made his decision. He reached into his bag and withdrew his Federal Air Marshal credentials, holding them where only Jessica could see them. Her eyes widened, but she didn't react visibly, just as he had instructed. Martinez then pulled out his service weapon, keeping it low and out of sight from the hijackers. "Jessica," he said quietly, his voice no longer shaking, "when I move, you get on the intercom and tell the captain we have a federal law enforcement action in progress." The transformation was complete. The terrified elderly passenger was gone, replaced by someone with 25 years of experience protecting commercial aircraft. Martinez stood up slowly, his weapon trained on the nearest hijacker. "Federal Air Marshal," he announced clearly. "Drop your weapons now." The cabin went silent except for the sound of engines and air circulation. The first hijacker spun around, reaching for his gun, but Martinez was already moving. 25 years of training took over. He advanced quickly, using the narrow aisle to his advantage, keeping his weapon sight picture clear while minimizing the risk to passengers. "Drop it now!" Martinez commanded again. The hijacker's hand was on his weapon when Martinez fired once, precisely, into the man's shoulder. The hijacker went down, his gun skittering under a seat. The second hijacker, seeing his partner fall, made the mistake of drawing his weapon in a confined space surrounded by innocent people. Martinez was already pivoting, his training allowing him to engage multiple targets while maintaining awareness of passenger locations. "Don't do it," Martinez warned. "You're surrounded by civilians. Put the weapon down." But the second hijacker panicked and raised his gun toward the passengers. Martinez didn't hesitate. His second shot was as precise as his first, disabling the threat without endangering anyone else. Both hijackers were down, disarmed, and no longer a threat to the aircraft. The entire engagement had lasted less than 30 seconds. Jessica was already on the intercom. "Captain, this is Jessica. We have a federal law enforcement situation that has been resolved. We need medical assistance and to coordinate with ground control for priority landing." Martinez secured the hijackers' weapons and began administering first aid to both men. His shots had been carefully placed to disable, not kill. As he worked, passengers began to realize what had just happened. The nervous old man who had been shaking during takeoff had just saved everyone on the aircraft. The businessman in 14B stared at Martinez in amazement. "You're a federal air marshal?" 25 years, Martinez said without looking up from treating the wounded hijackers. "Retired last month." "But you seem so scared of flying." Martinez glanced at him briefly. "I wasn't scared of flying. I was scared of this." The captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Rodriguez. We are diverting to Denver International Airport, where medical personnel and federal agents will be waiting. I want to personally thank our Federal Air Marshal for his professional response to this situation." As the plane descended toward Denver, Martinez returned to his seat. The shaking in his hands was gone. The nervousness had disappeared. He looked like what he had always been, a professional who had spent his career keeping people safe at 30,000 feet. Jessica approached him during the descent. "I don't understand. If you're retired, why were you armed? Why were you on this flight?" Martinez smiled for the first time since boarding. "Old habits. I still carry my credentials, and I was flying to Denver to visit my daughter. When I noticed those two during boarding, I contacted the captain and identified myself as backup security. You were watching them the whole time, from the moment they tried to board separately but ended up in seats they hadn't paid for. Their story didn't add up, their behavior was wrong, and they were carrying weapons poorly concealed. Martinez looked around the cabin at passengers who were now looking at him with respect rather than pity. The nervousness you saw wasn't about flying. It was about waiting to see if my suspicions were correct, and hoping I was wrong. When the aircraft landed in Denver, Martinez was the last passenger to deplane. He waited while federal agents boarded, took custody of the suspects, and debriefed him on the incident. As he finally walked up the jetway, Martinez was approached by Captain Rodriguez. "Marshal Martinez, on behalf of the crew and passengers, thank you. You saved lives today." Martinez shook the captain's hand. "Just doing my job, even when I'm not officially on the job." The businessman from 14B was waiting at the gate. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I thought you were just a scared old man." Martinez nodded. "That's what I wanted everyone to think, including them." He gestured toward the federal agents who were processing the scene. "Sometimes being underestimated is the best tactical advantage you can have." David Martinez spent most of Flight 238 being pitied, dismissed, and seen as a frightened old man who didn't belong on an airplane. But when danger emerged, when lives were at stake, his true nature revealed itself. He had dedicated 25 years to protecting commercial aviation, traveling millions of miles as an invisible guardian. Even in retirement, he couldn't turn off the instincts that kept passengers safe. Martinez didn't need recognition or respect from fellow passengers. His job was to be invisible until the moment invisibility was no longer an option. And when that moment came, he was ready. Have you ever misjudged someone based on their appearance or behavior? Share their story in the comments. Let us know what city you're watching from. Subscribe to Silent Legends. We honor the hidden protectors, the quiet guardians, and the professionals who keep us safe without needing thanks. Because sometimes the person you assume is most vulnerable is actually the one keeping everyone else alive.